Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and looked around his new prison cell. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from inside the metal itself. He had never seen anything like it before, but then again, he had never been inside an alien prison before either. The Zephyrian guards had thrown him in here 3 hours ago after his capture. They were tall, lizard-like creatures with green and yellow scales that changed color when they got angry or excited. Jake had learned that much during his brief time as their prisoner. He flexed his hands against the energy cuffs that held his wrists. The restraints hummed with power and sent small shocks through his arms whenever he tried to move too much. The aliens were not taking any chances with their human prisoner. Jake thought back to how he had ended up in this mess. His mission had been simple enough. Fly close to the Zephyrian prison facility, take pictures, and report back to Earth Command about what he saw. The war between humans and the Zephyrian Empire had been going on for 3 years now, and Earth needed information about how the enemy treated their prisoners. But his stealth ship had run into a patrol that was not supposed to be there. Before he knew it, Jake was surrounded by alien fighters and his ship was disabled. Now, instead of taking pictures of the prison from the outside, he was getting a very close look at it from the inside. The cell was about 10 feet by 10 feet, with smooth walls that curved up to meet the ceiling. There was a small bench built into one wall and a hole in the corner that he assumed was some kind of toilet. The only light came from those glowing blue lines in the walls. But what made this cell different from the others he had seen was its size. Most of the cells he had passed on the way here were much smaller. This one was built for something much larger than a human being. Jake did not have to wait long to find out what that something was. The energy barrier that served as the cell door flickered and went dark. 2 Zephyrian guards pushed another prisoner into the cell. This prisoner was not like anything Jake had ever seen before, even in his wildest dreams. It was a dragon, not the kind of dragon from old Earth stories, but close enough that Jake's mind immediately made the connection. The creature was huge, at least 20 feet long from nose to tail. Its scales were black as space, with edges that seemed to absorb the blue light from the walls. Massive wings were folded against its sides, and its head was the size of a small car. But it was the eyes that caught Jake's attention. They were golden yellow with flecks of orange, and they held an intelligence that was unmistakably aware and thinking. This was not some dumb animal. This was a person, just in a very different body. The guard said something in their hissing language that Jake did not understand. Then they activated the energy barrier again and left. Their scales showing the orange and red colors that Jake had learned meant they were amused. Jake and the dragon looked at each other across the cell. Neither of them moved for several long minutes. Finally, Jake decided to break the silence. "Well, this is new," he said, trying to keep his voice calm and friendly. The dragon did not respond. It simply lay down in the center of the cell, curled its tail around its body, and closed its eyes. Jake was not even sure if it had understood him. For the next 2 days, they shared the cell in complete silence. The dragon mostly slept or sat, very still, like a statue. Jake tried a few more times to start a conversation but got no response. He began to wonder if the creature could even understand human speech. The guards brought food twice a day. Jake got a tray of something that looked like gray paste but actually tasted okay. The dragon got what looked like chunks of raw meat, which it ate without any sign of enjoyment. Jake spent his time doing exercises to keep his body in shape and his mind focused. He had been trained for situations like this, though admittedly, not exactly like this. The military had taught him how to resist interrogation, how to escape from various types of restraints, and how to survive in hostile environments. But they had not covered what to do when locked up with a space dragon. On the 3rd day, something changed. Jake was doing his morning exercise routine, a series of movements that combined martial arts with meditation techniques. The routine was called the Void Dance, and he had learned it from an old instructor who claimed it came from warriors who lived among the stars long ago. Jake had always thought that was just a story, but the movements helped him stay calm and focused, so he kept practicing them. He was halfway through the routine when the dragon spoke. "You know the ancient forms." The voice rumbled like distant thunder. The dragon had not moved, had not even opened its eyes, but Jake knew the words had come from it. Jake stopped moving and stared at the creature. You can talk. I can do many things, human. The question is whether any of them matter in this place. The dragon's eyes opened and fixed on Jake. Where did you learn those movements? From an instructor back on Earth. He said they came from something called the Starlight Warriors, but I always thought that was just a story he made up. The dragon's head lifted slightly, and Jake could swear he saw something like interest in those golden eyes. The Starlight Warriors were real, I should know. I taught them those forms over 2,000 years ago. Jake felt his mouth fall open. 2,000 years? That was impossible. But then again, he was sitting in an alien prison talking to a dragon, so maybe impossible was not the right word anymore. My name is Jake Morrison, he said, settling down to sit cross-legged on the floor. If they were going to talk, he might as well be comfortable. I am called Korethaval, though that name has not been spoken aloud in many centuries. I was once the guardian of the Great Gates, before the Zephyrians found me and brought me to this place. The Great Gates? Jake had never heard of them, but something about the name sent a chill down his spine. Doorways between the stars. Human. Passages that could take you from one world to another in the blink of an eye. They connected thousands of worlds in a network that spanned the galaxy. Korethaval's voice grew sad. Until I closed them all to prevent a great evil from spreading. Jake leaned forward, fascinated despite himself. What kind of evil? The kind that eats worlds and leaves nothing but empty shells behind. The kind that turns friends into enemies and hope into despair. The dragon's eyes grew distant, as if seeing things that had happened long ago. We called them the Devourers, and they came closer to destroying everything than anyone alive today could possibly imagine. And you stopped them? I stopped them, by breaking the very thing they used to spread so quickly. I closed the Great Gates and trapped them on the worlds they had already taken. It saved the galaxy, but it also meant that thousands of civilizations were suddenly cut off from each other. Many fell into darkness. Others, like the Zephyrians, grew strong by conquering their neighbors. Jake tried to process what he was hearing. If this dragon was telling the truth, then he was talking to someone who had literally saved the galaxy from destruction. Someone who had made a choice that changed the course of history for countless worlds. Why are you telling me this? Jake, asked Korethaval, studied him with those ancient eyes. Because you are not what you appear to be, Jake Morrison. I can sense it in the way your mind works, in the patterns of energy that flow through your body. You have been changed, enhanced in ways that your people barely understand. Jake felt his blood turn cold. His secret was supposed to be completely hidden. Only a handful of people on Earth knew what had been done to him, and they had all sworn to take that knowledge to their graves. I don't know what you mean, he said, but even to his own ears the words sounded weak. Your brain has been modified to interface with quantum systems. You are what some might call a bridge between flesh and energy, between the physical and the digital. There are perhaps a dozen like you in all of human space, created through a process that kills 9 out of every 10 who attempt it. Jake stared at the dragon in shock. Korethaval had just described the Nexus project in perfect detail. The secret military program that had turned Jake and 11 others into living weapons capable of interfacing directly with advanced technology. How could you possibly know that? Korethaval's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, showing teeth like crystal daggers. Because, young human, I helped design the process your people used. Long ago, before your species had even learned to use fire, I worked with others to create guardians who could protect the galaxy from threats too great for any single world to face. That's impossible. The Nexus project used technology we found in ruins on the edge of our solar system. Human scientists spent decades figuring out how to make it work. Human scientists spent decades figuring out how to make my technology work, Korethaval corrected. The ruins you found were from a ship I sent to your world long ago, carrying the tools needed to create new guardians when the time was right. Jake felt the world spinning around him. Everything he thought he knew about his own enhancement, About the war, about humanity's place in the galaxy, was suddenly turned upside down. You're saying that humans becoming cognitive enhancers was part of some kind of plan? I am saying that the galaxy has a way of preparing itself for the challenges to come. And I suspect, Jake Morrison, that your capture and imprisonment in this cell with me is no accident either. Jake stared at Karethval for a long time after the dragon finished speaking. The idea that his enhancement was part of some ancient plan seemed crazy. But then again, everything about his current situation was crazy. He was sitting in an alien prison talking to a dragon who claimed to be thousands of years old. Let me get this straight, Jake said slowly. You're telling me that you sent technology to Earth, knowing that someday humans would find it and use it to create enhanced soldiers? Not soldiers, Karethval corrected. Guardians. There is a difference, though your people may not understand it yet. What kind of difference? The dragon shifted his massive body, making the floor of the cell vibrate slightly. A soldier fights for his nation, his people, his cause. A guardian protects all life, everywhere, even when that life cannot protect itself. The enhancement process your people call the Nexus Project was designed to create beings capable of thinking beyond the limits of any single world or species. Jake thought about this. In his 3 years as an enhanced human, he had indeed found himself thinking differently than he had before. Problems that once seemed impossible now had obvious solutions. Connections between seemingly unrelated things became clear. It was as if his brain could see patterns that normal humans missed. The void dance you were practicing, Karethval continued, was designed to help enhanced minds stay focused and calm. The movements create patterns in your neural pathways that allow your consciousness to expand beyond your physical body. My instructor never told me that. Your instructor probably did not know. Knowledge has a way of being lost over time, even when it is passed down through generations. But the movements themselves carry the memory of their purpose. Jake stood up and began going through the void dance routine again, this time paying attention to how it made him feel. As he moved through the familiar patterns, he noticed something he had never felt before. His awareness seemed to stretch beyond the walls of the cell. He could sense the energy flowing through the prison systems, the electrical patterns that powered the lights and the barriers. You feel it now, Karethval observed. Your enhanced mind connecting with the quantum field that underlies all technology. Jake paused in his movements. Is that what this is? I can feel something, like electricity in the air, but more complex. Much more complex. The Zephyrians use biomechanical technology, systems that combine living tissue with artificial components. Your enhanced brain can interface with both the biological and mechanical aspects of their systems. This was getting more interesting by the minute. Jake had always known that his enhancement gave him the ability to interface with computer systems, but he had never tried it on alien technology. The military had been very careful to limit his exposure to captured alien equipment, afraid that he might accidentally trigger some kind of security system. Could I actually control their systems? With proper training, yes. But it would be dangerous. The Zephyrians have built safeguards into their technology to prevent exactly that kind of intrusion. Jake sat back down, his mind racing with possibilities. If he could learn to interface with the prison systems, maybe he could find a way to escape. But first he needed to understand more about what he was dealing with. Tell me about the Great Gates, he said. How did they work? Karethval's eyes took on a distant look, as if he was remembering things from long ago. Imagine doorways made of pure energy, openings in space itself that could connect any 2 points in the galaxy. Step through a gate on one world, and you would emerge instantly on another world thousands of light years away. That sounds like science fiction. Your people call many things science fiction that are simply science you do not yet understand. The gates worked by manipulating quantum space, creating tunnels through dimensions that exist parallel to your own reality. Jake tried to picture it. Instant travel between star systems would change everything. No more months or years spent crossing space in ships. Civilizations separated by vast distances could be connected as easily as cities on the same planet. Why did you close them? Because the Devourers learned to use them. They would send small groups through the gates to new worlds where they would hide and grow in number. By the time the local population realized what was happening, it was too late. Entire planets would be consumed within months. What exactly were these devourers? Karethval was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was heavy, with old pain. They were once like you and me, living beings with hopes and dreams and families. But they encountered something in the deep dark between galaxies, something that changed them. They became creatures that could only survive by consuming the life energy of others. Jake shivered despite the warmth of the cell. And they spread through the gate network like a plague. At first we thought we could stop them by fighting them world by world. But they were too fast, too adaptable. For every world we saved, 3 more would fall. I realized that the only way to stop them was to cut off their method of rapid travel. So you destroyed the gates? I sealed them, locked them in quantum stasis so they could not be opened without the proper key. It stopped the devourers from spreading, but it also trapped them on the worlds they had already taken, and it left the rest of the galaxy isolated and alone. Jake was beginning to understand the magnitude of what Karethval had done. The dragon had made a choice that saved countless worlds, but at the cost of breaking apart the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. How long ago was this? Nearly 3,000 years by your measure of time. I have been alone since, then guarding the secret of how to reopen the gates, making sure that knowledge could never be misused again, until the Zephyrians captured you. Yes. They have been draining my life energy for 600 years, using it to power their experiments. They believe they can force me to reveal the secret of the gates, but they do not understand that the knowledge is not something that can be taken by force. Jake felt a surge of anger at the thought of these aliens slowly torturing the ancient dragon for centuries. Karethval had saved the galaxy, and this was how he was repaid. There has to be a way to stop them. Perhaps, but it would require great risk, and the consequences could be catastrophic if we fail. What kind of consequences? Karethval turned his great head to look directly at Jake. The Zephyrians are not just trying to reopen the gates for travel. They want to use them as weapons. Imagine being able to open a portal directly inside an enemy ship or on the surface of an enemy planet. They could destroy entire civilizations without ever putting their own forces at risk. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. If the Zephyrians gained control of gate technology, they would not just win the war against humanity. They would become unstoppable conquerors, able to strike anywhere in the galaxy without warning. We have to stop them. We? You are one enhanced human, and I am a prisoner who has been weakened by centuries of captivity. What could we possibly do against an entire empire? Jake stood up and began pacing the small cell. His enhanced brain was already working on the problem, seeing connections and possibilities that had not been obvious before. You said I could interface with their biomechanical systems. What if I could get into their computer network? Could I access their research data? Theoretically, yes, but the moment you tried, their security systems would detect you. You would be dead within seconds. What if I had help? What if someone who understood their technology was guiding me? Karethval's eyes narrowed. You are suggesting that I help. You break into their systems? I'm suggesting that we work together. You have the knowledge, I have the ability. Maybe together we can find a way to not just escape, but to make sure they never get their hands on gate technology. The dragon was quiet for a long time, thinking. Jake could almost see the ancient mind weighing options and considering possibilities. It would be extremely dangerous, Karethval said finally. If we fail, we will both die. And if we succeed, we may unleash forces that have been dormant for millennia. And if we do nothing, the Zephyrians eventually break you and get what they want anyway. At least this way we have a chance to stop them. You speak like a true guardian, Jake Morrison. Very well. I will teach you what you need to know. But understand this. Once we begin this path, there will be no turning back. We will either save the galaxy or destroy it. Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he nodded. Then we better make sure we save it. Over the next several hours, Karethval began teaching Jake about Zephyrian technology. The dragon's knowledge was vast and detailed, covering everything from basic energy systems to complex quantum mechanics. Jake's enhanced brain absorbed the information like a sponge, making connections and understanding concepts that would have taken normal humans years to master. But it was not just technical knowledge that HFY shared. He also taught Jake mental techniques that had been developed by the ancient guardians, ways of focusing consciousness and expanding awareness that went far beyond anything humans had discovered. Your enhancement gives you the ability to interface with technology, HFY explained. But these techniques will allow you to interface with reality itself. You will be able to perceive and manipulate the quantum fields that underlie all existence. Jake had been a prisoner for 3 weeks when the Zephyrians finally came for him. He heard their footsteps in the corridor long before they reached his cell, their clawed feet clicking against the metal floor in a rhythm that spelled trouble. The energy barrier flickered off and 4 guards entered. Their scales were bright red, which Jake had learned meant they were excited about something. Behind them came a Zephyrian who was much larger than the others, with darker scales and scars that crisscrossed his face and arms. The human will come. With us now, the large one said in broken human speech. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake looked over at HFY, who appeared to be sleeping in his usual spot in the center of the cell. But Jake could sense through their mental connection that the dragon was very much awake and ready. Where are we going? Jake asked as the guards put energy cuffs on his wrists. The warden wants to speak with you. You have been here long enough to think about your situation. Perhaps now you will be more willing to talk. They marched Jake through corridors he had not seen before, deeper into the prison facility. The walls here were different, covered with machines that hummed and sparked with electricity. Through open doorways, Jake could see laboratories filled with equipment he did not recognize. The interrogation room was small and cold, with a metal chair in the center surrounded by devices that looked very much like torture equipment. The warden was waiting for him, a Zephyrian who was even larger than the guards. His scales were almost black and his eyes were the color of old blood. I am Warden Skeltar, the creature said as the guards forced Jake into the chair. You have been my guest for 3 weeks, human. I trust you have found your accommodations adequate? The room service could use some work, Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Skeltar made a sound that might have been laughter. Your species has an interesting sense of humor, even in the face of death. Tell me, do you know why you are here? Because your pilots got lucky and caught me in a patrol sweep. No, human. You are here because we need information about your homeworld's defenses. The war between our peoples will soon enter a new phase, and we require data that will help us minimize our own losses. The warden gestured to a guard, who activated a device that projected a hologram in the air between them. Jake's breath caught as he saw the image. It was Earth, turning slowly in space, beautiful and blue and impossibly far away. Your planet is quite lovely, Skeltar continued. It will be a shame to destroy it. But that is what war requires sometimes. Unless, of course, you can provide us with information that would make such destruction unnecessary. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would not help anyone, least of all the billions of people on Earth who were depending on soldiers like him to keep them safe. I'm just a pilot, he said. I don't know anything about planetary defenses. Oh, but I think you know, much more than that. Skeltar activated another device and Jake felt electricity shoot through his body. The pain was intense but brief, just enough to get his attention. We have been studying your species for some time now, human. Most of you are quite predictable, but occasionally we encounter one who is different, stronger, faster, more intelligent. You are one of those special humans, are you not? Jake said nothing, but his mind was racing. If the Zephyrians knew about the enhancement program, then Earth was in even more danger than he had thought. We know about your Nexus project, Skeltar continued, and Jake's blood ran cold. We know that your people have been experimenting with technology beyond their understanding. We also know that only a few humans have survived the process. The warden leaned closer, his breath smelling like rotting meat. You are what your people call a cognitive enhancer, are you not? A human whose brain has been modified to interface with quantum systems? Jake remained silent, but Skeltar seemed to take that as confirmation. Excellent. Then you will be even more useful than I hoped. The warden gestured to another guard, who wheeled in a machine that looked like a combination of computer and medical equipment. This device will allow us to extract the information we need directly from your brain. The process is quite painful, and there is a significant chance it will kill you, but the data we obtain will be worth the risk. As the guards began connecting the machine to various points on Jake's head, he closed his eyes and reached out with his enhanced consciousness. Following the techniques Korithval had taught him, he let his awareness expand beyond his physical body. Immediately, he could feel the electronic systems all around him. The prison's computer network was like a vast web of information and control systems, all connected through quantum communication channels. And at the center of it all was something that made his enhanced brain sing with recognition. Technology that was not entirely Zephyrian. The aliens had found pieces of gate technology and were trying to understand how it worked. Their research facility was built around a partially reconstructed gate, powered by energy they were draining from Korithval. Jake reached deeper into the prison's systems, following data pathways and security protocols. The Zephyrians had good defenses, but they were designed to stop conventional computer intrusion. They had never encountered a human consciousness that could flow through their systems like water. In the research database, Jake found what he was, looking for complete plans for the Zephyrian invasion of Earth. Ship deployments, attack routes, target priorities, everything the aliens needed to destroy his homeworld. But he also found something else. The research facility was not just trying to understand gate technology. They were planning to use it as a weapon. Once they figured out how to control the gates, they could open portals directly inside human ships or on the surface of human colonies. The war would be over in days. Jake began copying the invasion plans into his enhanced memory, but he also started doing something else. Using techniques Korithval had shown him, he began planting small changes in the Zephyrian computer systems. Nothing dramatic that would be noticed immediately, but subtle alterations that would cause problems later. "The machine is ready, Warden," one of the guards reported. "Excellent. Begin the extraction process." Jake felt electricity surge through the devices attached to his head, but instead of fighting it, he used it. The energy gave him a direct pathway into the prison's central computer core, and he followed it like a river flowing downstream. Now he could sense everything, every system, every database, every security protocol. And in the deepest levels of the facility, he could feel Korithval's presence, weak but still fighting against the machines that were draining his life force. Working as quickly as he could, Jake began shutting down systems throughout the prison. First the security cameras, then the communication arrays, then the locks on the cell doors. He moved through the computer network like a ghost, leaving chaos in his wake. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility as hundreds of prisoners found their cell doors opening. Jake could hear shouting in the corridors as guards tried to figure out what was happening. "What is this?" Skeltar roared, his scales flashing bright red. "How are the systems failing?" Jake opened his eyes and smiled. "Because I'm not just a pilot." The energy cuffs holding him to the chair sparked and died. Jake stood up, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge the guard who lunged at him. The Zephyrian crashed into the wall behind him, stunned. "Impossible," Skeltar hissed. "No organic mind can interface with our systems directly." "You're right," Jake said as he backed toward the door. "No normal organic mind can. But I'm not normal." He reached out with his consciousness again, this time targeting the room's life support systems. The lights went out and emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a red glow that made the Zephyrians look like demons. Jake ran for the door, using his enhanced speed to stay ahead of the guards. Behind him, he could hear Skeltar shouting orders in the Zephyrian language. The corridors were chaos. Escaped prisoners were fighting with guards, alarms were wailing, and emergency lights were flashing. Jake made his way through the confusion, following the mental map he had created of the facility during his intrusion into their computers. He needed to reach the central chamber where they were holding Korithval. The dragon was the key to everything. Without him, the Zephyrians could never unlock the secrets of gate technology. The central chamber was 3 levels down and heavily guarded, but Jake's intrusion into the computer systems had caused enough chaos that most of the guards had been called away to deal with escaping prisoners. When Jake finally reached the chamber, what he saw made his blood boil with rage. Korethval was suspended in the center of the room by thick energy cables that glowed with power. Machines surrounded the dragon, drawing energy directly from his body and channeling it into a partially constructed gate device. The ancient guardian looked terrible. His scales had lost their luster, and his great body seemed smaller than it had in their cell. But his eyes were still bright with intelligence and determination. "You came," Korethval said, as Jake entered the chamber. "Did you think I would leave you here? I hoped you would not try. This place is too heavily defended even for someone with your abilities." Jake floated in the cold darkness of space, watching pieces of the destroyed Zephyrian facility drift past him like deadly snow. His enhanced brain was working overtime, trying to figure out how they were going to survive without a ship or life support. Next to him, Korethval hung motionless in the vacuum. The dragon's massive form was perfectly still, but Jake could sense through their mental connection that his friend was very much alive and thinking hard about their situation. "We have perhaps 10 minutes before the cold kills us," Korethval said, his voice reaching Jake through their shared consciousness rather than through sound. "Even with my natural resistance to temperature extremes, this environment will eventually prove fatal." Jake looked around at the debris field surrounding them. Most of it was twisted metal and broken machinery, but he could see a few larger pieces that might provide temporary shelter. More importantly, his enhanced senses were picking up energy signatures from some of the wreckage. "There," he said, pointing toward a section of the facility that had survived mostly intact. "That looks like it might still have power." They swam through space toward the debris, using pieces of wreckage to push themselves along. Jake's enhanced coordination made him surprisingly good at zero-gravity movement, while Korethval's powerful limbs allowed him to cover large distances with each push. The section they reached turned out to be part of the research laboratory, where the Zephyrians had been studying gate technology. Emergency lighting cast an eerie glow through cracked windows, and Jake could see that the compartment was still holding air. "The airlocks are damaged," Jake observed as they approached. "We'll have to break in." "Allow me," Korethval said. The dragon's claws, which Jake had assumed were just for fighting, turned out to be perfect tools for cutting through metal. Within minutes, they had carved an opening large enough for both of them to enter. Once inside the pressurized compartment, Jake took his first real breath in what felt like hours. The air was thin and tasted of ozone and fear, but it was better than the vacuum of space. "We cannot stay here long," Korethval warned. "This section is losing pressure slowly. We have perhaps an hour before it becomes uninhabitable." Jake was already moving through the laboratory, his enhanced senses examining the equipment that had survived the explosion. Much of it was damaged beyond repair, but some pieces were still functional. More importantly, he could sense something that made his enhanced brain sing with recognition. "Korethval, look at this." Jake stopped in front of a machine that was different from the others. Where the Zephyrian equipment was all sharp angles and biomechanical components, this device was smooth and curved, made from materials that seemed to shift color in the light. "That is not Zephyrian technology," the dragon said, moving closer to examine the machine. "No, it's not. But I recognize the quantum signature. This is gate technology. Real gate technology, not the crude copy the Zephyrians were trying to build." Korethval's eyes widened. "Impossible. All the original gate devices were destroyed when I sealed the network." Jake ran his hands over the machine's surface, feeling the familiar tingle of quantum fields responding to his enhanced neural patterns. "Maybe not all of them. This feels like it's been dormant for a very long time, but it's still functional. If that is true, then we may have found more than just a way to escape. We may have found a way to end this war." Jake looked at his friend in confusion. "How do you mean?" "Think about it, Jake. The Zephyrians started this war because they saw humanity as a threat to their expansion. They are afraid that your people will grow strong enough to challenge their empire. But what if there was a way to make expansion itself unnecessary? You're talking about reopening the gate network." Not the entire network, that would still be too dangerous, but a limited system, carefully controlled, that could allow peaceful trade and communication between worlds instead of conquest and war. Jake considered this as he continued to examine the gate device. His enhanced brain was already analyzing its construction, understanding how the quantum fields interacted to create stable portals through space. It would need to be managed by someone who understood the technology completely, he said. Someone who could prevent it from being misused. Someone like a dragon who helped design the original network, Korethval agreed, and someone with the enhanced abilities needed to interface with quantum systems directly. You're suggesting we become the guardians of a new gate network. I am suggesting we become what the galaxy needs, protectors who can ensure that this technology is used for peace instead of war. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air in the damaged laboratory. What Korethval was proposing would change everything. Not just the war between humans and Zephyrians, but the entire balance of power in the galaxy. It's a huge responsibility, he said. The greatest responsibilities often fall to those who least expect them, Korethval replied. But I believe we are ready for this burden. Jake made his decision. What do we need to do? First, we need to activate this device and use it to escape this debris field. Then we need to find a way to reach the nearest inhabited system and warn them about the Zephyrian invasion plans you discovered. And after that? After that, we begin building something new, a network that connects worlds instead of isolating them, but one that cannot be used for conquest or destruction. Jake began working on the gate device, his enhanced consciousness flowing into its quantum processors. The machine was incredibly complex, far beyond anything humans had ever built. But his modified brain could understand its patterns and functions. As he worked, something unexpected began to happen. The device started responding to both his neural patterns and Korethval's bioelectric field. Instead of simply activating, it began to merge with their consciousness, creating a three-way connection between human, dragon, and machine. Jake, something is wrong, Korethval said. But his voice sounded different, as if it was coming from inside Jake's own head. Not wrong, Jake replied, though he was not sure if he was speaking aloud or just thinking. Different. The machine is designed to work with multiple consciousness types. It needs both of us to function properly. The merger continued, and Jake felt his awareness expanding beyond anything he had experienced before. Through the gate device, he could sense quantum pathways that stretched across the galaxy, dormant connections that had once linked thousands of worlds. But more than that, he could feel Korethval's ancient memories flowing into his mind. He saw the galaxy as it had been before the Devourers, when the gate network had allowed peaceful civilizations to flourish across countless worlds. He experienced the terror of the first Devourer attacks, the desperate battles fought by guardians like Korethval, and the agonizing decision to seal the gates and break apart the greatest civilization in galactic history. At the same time, Korethval was experiencing Jake's memories, his training as a soldier, his enhancement, his love for Earth and determination to protect it. The dragon saw through human eyes for the first time, understanding the young species that had grown strong in isolation and now faced threats beyond their comprehension. The laboratory around them began to change. The gate device was not just activating, it was transforming, growing, becoming something larger and more complex. Biomechanical components from the Zephyrian equipment were being absorbed and integrated, while new structures grew from materials that seemed to appear from nowhere. What's happening to us? Jake asked, though he was starting to understand. We are becoming what this galaxy needs, Korethval replied. A living gate, a mobile connection point that can bring worlds together without the risks of a permanent network. The transformation was accelerating now. The walls of the laboratory were dissolving and being rebuilt as something that was part ship, part organism, part quantum processor. Jake found himself at the center of it all, his consciousness serving as the bridge between human technology, dragon wisdom, and ancient gate science. When the process finally stopped, they were no longer floating in a damaged research facility. They were inside something that had never existed before, a living starship that responded to thought and emotion as much as physical controls. The Dragon Ship, Jake said, testing the name as it appeared in his mind. Yes, Korethval agreed. And we are its crew, its brain, its purpose. Through sensors that felt like extensions of his own body, Jake could perceive space around them. The debris field was still there, but it looked different now. Instead of wreckage, he saw raw materials that could be used to build more ships like this one. Instead of a disaster, he saw opportunity. The Zephyrians will come looking for survivors, he said. Let them come. They will find something they did not expect. Jake felt the ship's weapons systems come online, but these were not conventional weapons. They were tools that could manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, devices that could disable enemy ships without destroying them, or create barriers that were virtually impenetrable. We need to test our capabilities, he said, and we need to get word to Earth about the invasion plans. Agreed. But first, we should deal with our immediate problem. Through the ship's sensors, Jake detected multiple Zephyrian vessels approaching the debris field. The Dragon ship flew through space faster than any vessel Jake had ever imagined possible. It did not move like a normal ship, pushing against space with engines and fuel. Instead, it seemed to flow through the quantum field that connected all things, slipping between dimensions like a fish swimming through water. Jake sat in what had once been the ship's control center, though it no longer looked like any bridge he had seen before. The walls were alive, pulsing gently with biomechanical rhythms that matched his heartbeat. Controls responded to his thoughts before he even realized he needed them. It was like being inside a living creature that had been designed specifically for him. Earth is still 3 days away at our current speed, he reported to Korethval, whose consciousness flowed through every part of the ship. We will arrive in time, the dragon replied, his voice echoing from speakers that grew from the walls. Like flowers. The Zephyrian invasion fleet will not reach your homeworld for another week. Jake nodded, though he was still worried. The invasion plans he had stolen from the prison facility showed that the Zephyrians were planning to attack with over 200 ships. Even if Earth's defenses had been strengthened since he left, it would not be enough to stop a force that large. Maybe we should contact Earth Command now, he suggested. Warn them what's coming. We will warn them, Korethval agreed, but we will also show them that there is another way to end this war. Through the ship's sensors, Jake could feel the quantum disturbances that marked other vessels moving through space. Most were too far away to identify, but some were close enough to examine. There were Zephyrian patrol ships, human cargo vessels, and ships from species he did not recognize. All of them were potential allies or enemies, depending on how the next few days went. Contact on long-range sensors, Jake announced as new signals, appeared on his awareness. It's a human military convoy heading toward the outer colonies. Can you identify the ships? Jake focused his enhanced consciousness through the ship's sensor array, reading the quantum signatures of the distant vessels. It's Admiral Stone's task force, 3 cruisers and a dozen escort ships. Admiral Patricia Stone was one of Earth's most experienced military commanders and someone Jake had served under before his enhancement. If anyone would listen to what he had to say, it would be her. Signal them, Jake decided. It's time to start building bridges. The Dragon ship's communication system was unlike anything in the human or Zephyrian fleets. Instead of simple radio, waves or quantum transmissions, it could send thoughts and emotions directly from one mind to another, across vast distances. When Jake opened contact with Admiral Stone's flagship, he did not just send words. He sent understanding. Admiral Stone was reviewing battle plans in her ready room when Jake's message reached her. One moment she was studying tactical displays, and the next she was experiencing memories that were not her own. She saw the Zephyrian prison through Jake's eyes, felt his amazement at meeting Korethval, understood the ancient history of the galaxy that the dragon had shared with him. Captain Morrison, she said aloud, looking around her empty ready room in confusion. How are you doing this? It's a long story, Admiral, Jake's voice replied, though she could not see him anywhere. But the short version is that I've found a way to end this war. Can you meet us at coordinates I'm sending to your navigation officer? Admiral Stone was a practical woman who had seen enough impossible things during the war to keep an open mind. If Jake Morrison was somehow speaking to her from inside her own head, and if he claimed to have found a way to end the fighting, then she owed it to her people to listen. "Change course," she ordered her bridge crew. "We have a rendezvous to make." The meeting took place in empty space between two star systems, far from any world that might be damaged if things went wrong. Admiral Stone's task force arrived first. Their ship spread out in a defensive formation that could respond to threats from any direction. When the dragon ship appeared, it did not arrive like a normal vessel. Instead, space itself seemed to fold and twist, creating an opening that the biomechanical ship flew through before closing behind it. "My God," Admiral Stone whispered as she watched the impossible vessel through her bridge's main screen. "What is that thing?" The dragon ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull seemed to be grown rather than built, with scales that shifted color in the starlight. It was clearly alive, but it was also obviously a ship capable of incredible things. "Admiral Stone," Jake's voice came through the communication system, though there was something different about it now. It sounded older, wiser, as if he had experienced lifetimes of knowledge in the week since she had last seen him. "Permission to come aboard?" "Granted," she replied, though she was not sure how he was going to manage it. Her ship was still several kilometers away from his. She got her answer a moment later when space around her ready room began to shimmer and fold. A portal opened in the air, and Jake Morrison stepped through, followed by something that took her breath away. The dragon was enormous, barely fitting through the portal despite its obvious intelligence in folding its wings and lowering its head. Its scales were black as deep space, but its eyes held wisdom that seemed older than the stars themselves. "Admiral," Jake said with a respectful nod, "I'd like you to meet Korathval, the last guardian of the Nexus Gates." Admiral Stone had been a soldier for 30 years, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for shaking hands with the dragon. Korathval's claw was larger than her entire hand, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. "Admiral Stone," the dragon said in a voice like distant thunder, "your reputation as a defender of peace precedes you. We have much to discuss." Over the next several hours, Jake and Korathval explained everything. The ancient history of the galaxy, the truth about the Gate Network, the Zephyrian invasion plans and their own transformation into something new. Admiral Stone listened with growing amazement and concern. "You're asking me to trust the fate of Earth to a plan that's never been tested," she said when they finished. "Not untested," Jake corrected. "We've already used it successfully with Zephyrian crews. When they experienced human thoughts and emotions directly, they understood that we're not the monsters their leaders have told them we are. And when you experienced their thoughts," Korathval added, "you saw that they are not monsters either. They are people, fighting for what they believe is right, just as you are." Admiral Stone paced around her ready room, thinking hard. Everything they were telling her went against decades of military training and experience. Wars were not ended by sharing feelings with the enemy. They were ended by defeating the enemy completely. But she had seen the invasion plans Jake had stolen. 200 Zephyrian ships would be more than Earth's defenses could handle. If there was any chance that his plan could work, she had to consider it. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked. "We intercept the invasion fleet before it reaches Earth," Jake explained. "But instead of fighting them, we use the dragon ship to share understanding between their crews and ours. Show them what we're really fighting for, and let them see what they're really fighting for. And if it doesn't work, if they attack anyway, then we fight," Korathval said simply. "But we fight as a last resort, not as a first choice." Admiral Stone made her decision. "I'll contact Earth Command and explain the situation. But Jake, if this goes wrong, if your plan fails and Earth is attacked because I trusted you, I'll never forgive myself." "If the plan fails," Jake replied, "we'll all have bigger problems than guilt." The next 3 days passed quickly as they prepared for the confrontation with the Zephyrian invasion fleet. Admiral Stone's task force was joined by every available human ship in the sector, creating a defensive force of nearly 50 vessels. It was still outnumbered 4-1, but it would have to be enough. The Zephyrians arrived exactly when Jake's stolen intelligence said they would, emerging from hyperspace in a formation that covered thousands of cubic kilometers. Their ships were larger and more heavily armed than anything in the human fleet, biomechanical monsters that looked like they had been grown in some alien nightmare. "This is Admiral Vexthul of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," came the transmission from the lead ship. "Surrender immediately, or we will destroy every human vessel in this system." "This is Admiral Stone of Earth Defense Command," she replied. "We're prepared to fight, but we're also prepared to talk. The choice is yours." Before the Zephyrian admiral could respond, the dragon ship moved between the two fleets. It was tiny compared to the massive warships surrounding it, but there was something about its presence that made both sides hesitate. "Admiral Vexthul," Jake's voice carried across all communication channels, "I have something to show you, something that will change how you see this war." "I have no interest in human propaganda," the Zephyrian commander replied, but Jake could hear uncertainty in his voice. "Not propaganda, truth. The truth about what we're all really fighting for." The dragon ship began to pulse with energy that went beyond the merely physical. Waves of quantum resonance spread out from its hull, carrying with them the complete history of the war from every perspective.